Let's call this Worksession order. This is the SAP project oversight report. Felix, we need to identify ourselves. You'll start, please, sir.
Felix Rivera.
Suzanne LaFrance.
Oh, Zig Burgess.
Mike Chadwick, Internal Audit.
Alton Thurman, Deputy Municipal Manager.
Pete Peterson.
Dick Training. Okay, Dick, it's
Great.
yours.
Well, welcome to the new assembly members. Thank you very much for being here. We are going to try to do a little pickup of some of the background. Just so we're all on the same page, I've been involved now for almost 2.5 years. I'm on my current contract expires in June because that's when everybody thought it was going to go live, and there's, needless to say, no need for oversight at that point in time. But now it does appear that they're going to go well beyond that time. But I do come here the last full week of every month. I do stay in touch with the leadership of the project on a weekly basis, every major leader position, and I have phone conversations with them. I attend most of the project management office meetings. I attend the functional steering committee meetings, mainly via phone. And then on the last full week I'm here, I pull together this report, and then I do this every Thursday at this time. Okay, so let's kind of move on. So
He's
the
got
overall
great artwork, by the way, on his slides. You'll like his artwork.
So just as a little background, and rather than giving you any information that might be my opinion, I'm basically regurgitating for you what was actually presented on March the 5th in the Anchorage Dispatch. I mean, there was an interview and a presentation by the Executive Steering Committee. The mayor was involved, and so the bottom line is that the price tag is going to be about $75 million, and that $40 million of it was in essence not effective in the first 4.5 years of the project, so the price tag is still going to be in that general vicinity, and I think at that time...
They kind of interrupt you
Sure.
for a second. That was none of the current administration now. Keep going.
Correct.
Yes, and then.
May I just ask real quick why the $40 million has no value, or?
Long story. There were several systems integrators were involved. There was the initial...
It starts with Black and Beach, the implementers
Right.
originally.
Right.
And Black and Beach did such a poor job that they were eventually let go.
Okay.
Some administration settled out of court.
Right.
And we could not go back and get any damages from it.
Okay. So just no progress.
Then Peloton came next for the implementation.
Okay.
So there were several causes. It was underbid in the first place, and woefully underbid in the first place.
Okay.
There was a general inability of the community to apply resources as desired or as planned. So that was a constant issue. The fundamental design of the system was not completed.
Okay.
So they were putting in a moving target. They were putting in a system that simply had not been. And when I first got here, one of the things, if you recall, that I did is I looked at the design document and was able to identify how many pages indicated to be determined. So it was clearly incomplete.
And this is not the first city that's happened. If you want to check it out, take a look at San Diego. They had the same problem. Portland had the same problem.
Okay.
There's other jurisdictions that have tried to bring SAP on that have fallen into the same problem. I know San Diego finally went with SAP as implementer, which we should have done years ago. It's their program. Anyway, sorry, Zig.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yes, Alden.
If you'd like, I mean,
Just want to make sure you have the information you need.
Alden's got a comment for
if
you.
you'd like, I mean, for the new assembly members that have been on there, we did have the pause, but we had the external review committee, which also had multiple backup documents from the cities that you just mentioned. I can forward those on to Barbara, and Barbara could email those on to the new assembly members and the review.
I think it would be good to do it to all the assembly members from the old ones we've forgotten sometimes.
It has been a while, hasn't it?
I'll email on to Barbara. She can.
I always thought you were a permanent city employee, Zig.
Okay, so continuation here. The mayor said the project will be valuable once we're done. Project will be worthless if we don't finish. I think that's a very key point. If you don't finish, it does not become a capital item. If it doesn't become a capital item, it doesn't get depreciated. If it doesn't get depreciated, then all of that money has to come out of the operating budget in the current year. So that's a big deal. Okay, it's never been this close so far and this far along. We're going to finish. There's no doubt. That's coming from Mike Abbott. Okay, a very key thing in 2014, just as I was arriving, there was an SAP quality assurance team that came here, and for $750-some thousand.
$750,000.
That was 2015.
Yeah. Okay. Early in 15. And they came up with their quality assurance evaluation, and basically said that it appears that the financial piece is in pretty good shape. 40 to 50% of the work is done. Should be pretty easy to salvage and go forward and finish. Okay. What has happened since then is an awful lot of that work has been redone. Okay, so the mayor called it more along the lines of a rebuild, not a remodel. This is the summary of the current project team's master plan. I tend to do this. I tend to try to, because it's so large. I mean, there's probably 4,000 tasks in there. It's very difficult to figure out where things are and what's going on. I try to summarize it up so you can get a picture. But the picture here, if this is now, all of those bars ought to be a little further along than where they are. Okay? And what's becoming confusing is that generally the plan is still targeting 7/3 go live, the plan in terms of the scheduled dates. So you're getting some confusion about what % complete really means and how far along are we. I mean, that kind of thing is going on right now. And they're struggling with getting that plan redone. Okay, so there's some good news here. I mean, land ho, if you will. We can now see what's out there. It's only a few months away, as opposed to 5 or 6 years away. So the end's finally in sight. A few months of work is left, and we should be there. I think this is some very important stuff. So these are some comments heard from the team. The MOA team members. After 3 false starts, we've never been this far into the implementation. That's a positive thing. So it helps to bolster the folks that are on the team. Does that make sense? And then another person was heard to say, I'm finally beginning to understand how this system works. Okay? So those are good messages. And now to kind of catch you up a little bit, especially with the language of the project, typical technology, technobabble kind of thing goes on all the time. So there are a lot of acronyms, and I'm not going to go through all of them. You have them in hard copy, so it's kind of a glossary for you. But there are some things that will come up in conversation in these sessions, as well as sessions with Alden, that you need to feel comfortable with. The very first one up there is it's referred to as FILO. That's the Finance and Logistics Modules of the SAP product. The other thing you'll hear a lot is you'll hear HCM, Human Capital Management. That's the payroll benefits portion of the SAP product. The teams are organized along these things, so you'll hear a lot of that. The other thing you'll hear is ECM, Enterprise Content Management. That's document management, that's scanning, that sort of thing. Storage of documents. The vendor is open text. You'll hear that term a lot. BWBI, Business Warehouse. OCM is, in essence, training and communications. That's referred to as OCM. People have not really mentioned ESS and MSS too much, but I would forewarn you that that's coming, and that will create issues, because it is the self-service functionality of the system. And when it starts touching people, you're going to start getting feedback. Okay?
See, would that be canned products?
Oh, yeah, that's
bring up the name, and it's supposed to produce the canned product for them.
Yeah, that's all SAP standard functionality.
It's
just that it's on the desktop, and it's all about, gee, you need to change your address where you want your benefit statement to go. You're going to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a computer system on Elderberg that did exactly that.
Yep. Okay, some other acronyms. I love this. ASAP is SAP's methodology for implementation. Interestingly enough, it is somewhat of an oxymoron in our particular case, isn't it? So ABAP, you'll hear ABAP. That is the SAP proprietary programming language. Okay? RISIFs, this is the way it's referred to. It's called RISIFs, and those letters all mean the basic objects of what is being developed and worked and presented and configured in the system. So there are workflows, reports, interfaces, customizations, enhancements, and forms. They're referred to as RISIFs, and they actually put an S at the end of it, and they count them, and that's what they're working on. That's what all the programmers are working on when you see anything about what they're doing. Does that make sense? Okay, HANA, you'll hear HANA. It means High Performance Analytic Appliance. It is proprietary to SAP. In essence, it's a database, but it's in memory, therefore much faster.
And you might tell them too that we have to use HANA with the latest build they've got for SAP out there.
Yep.
They don't have the choice to use anything else other than HANA.
The Muni decided to outsource, in essence, the activity of the system. Instead of having it here on your own mainframes as you do with PeopleSoft, it's out there in the cloud. That's where it's going to be, and it's referred to as HEC. And it's basically, that's what you were saying, is you've got to use HANA, the database, in order to do that. So we went through a long dissertation of pluses and minuses of going that route. And the HEC contract was actually finalized just a couple months ago?
HEC was done in
January, okay? So you'll also hear AMS. This is SAP's Application Management Services. This is the resources necessary to keep everything operational, and that's a major contract that you also just recently tied down.
in March.
Okay? And then with regard to the individual people here, the Muni personnel, you'll hear the team talking a lot about the BPOs, business process owners, which in essence are the directors and the managers who have to, who in essence are responsible for the functional activity of the Muni. Then you'll also hear SMEs, SMEs, subject matter experts. Those in essence are the Muni staff people that are working on the project. Okay? And the last one, if you're familiar with Kronos, has been the time clocks around here that are getting replaced. New vendor, Kava. Okay? You will also hear about master data. Master data is all the relatively fixed, infrequent, changed kind of data that is represented and stored in SAP. Like, for instance, account number table. Okay? Organization code table. Don't get changed very often. Okay? Master data. The blueprint. So in terms of, remember ASAP, the methodology? Well, one of the phases of work is called the blueprint. All right, and it's the design documentation phase of work. Everybody agreed, needed to finish that, so the very first 6 or 8 months of the SAP contract, we were finishing the design, documenting a heck of a lot of detail. Then the next phase is realization. It gets a little confusing. For some reason, they like to group everything together in realization. It really is 2 pieces. It's the development piece, and it's the testing piece. Okay? That's what SAP refers to as realization. What's going on right now is systems integration testing, so those are referred to as SIT, and the cycles are 1, 2, and 3. We finished cycle 1 2 months ago.
10th of February.
Thank you. He's my straight man. We're into cycle 2. Okay, so systems integration testing 2 right now is going on. Then there's a new term that came up a few months ago that SAP is referring to as MOC. And there's MOC 1, 2, and 3. These are simulated data conversion cycles. So they're preparing for the big moment when you go live and you got to move all the current data in there. Okay? But they're using all these simulated data conversions as part of the systems integration testing. Okay, so right now they're working on MOC 3 in preparation for SIT 3. Does that make sense?
Any questions for Zig?
So
Can you remind me of what SAP stands for? Without really backing up.
SAP is the name of a company,
Okay.
but the name of their product is also referred to as SAP.
Okay. So that's not an acronym.
No.
Okay.
If it is, it's German. They are in Germany
Click
somewhere.
on that first slide you got into, you have ASAP.
That's right.
Would you change that to $?
Okay, so rather than worrying about spilled milk and water over the dam and all those other kinds of things, let's just figure out where we are right now. So that's kind of the message here. This is an accumulation of the results of the weekly Project Management Office report for status that they do internally. And because you're kind of new to this, I repeated this business down here, the stoplight metaphor. Green means that we're on track with regards to schedule, cost, and scope. Those are the three areas that they look at. Yellow says risk of not meeting schedule, cost, or scope. Red is cannot hold to schedule, cost, or scope. Gray is no report, no data. Okay? So what you're looking at here is these are Fridays across the top. So 1/6 was the first Friday in 2017. I have this going all the way back for 2 years, 2.5 years. It makes an interesting little trail, but obviously you can't see it. And so I decided to just show it from the beginning of this year. And then the week number, the numbers underneath there, when you start with the 39, those are week numbers since the beginning of the SAP contract. Now, I think it's very important to note, that's why it's good. Is this working? There it is. The reason I circled the 55 out there, that's what's in the SAP contract. Okay? So the SAP contract is coming to an end unless some action is taken. Okay? And my understanding is SAP is probably going to continue and probably going to work, as they refer to it, at risk. Is that their term? At risk. Okay? So this is the picture, and these are the various teams over on the left-hand side. There's a technology team and so forth, right on down the line. Okay? At the bottom, you'll notice that it's red overall. Well, that means they're not going to make 7-3. Okay? I think the other thing that becomes interesting is right about 3:31 is when everybody realized they had a little more time, and all of a sudden their progress started looking better because they had more time. Here's one of the absolute good things, in our opinion. A successful project management best practice is what we are suggesting to you there. When faced with high volumes, the work, reporting, and tracking of to-do lists should occur daily. And I would tell you that's exactly what's happening. That's good news. All it is getting a daily report from the team on what's going on. Otherwise, you're faced with the devil's in the details and you get into trouble. Okay, so this is just a very quick listing of the various pages of the report that Alden receives every day at about 8 o'clock.
Go over to 8:15.
Go over to 8:15. So they're tracking, you can see right there where we're tracking the financial and logistics script execution. Those are the test shots. Okay, because this is all part of systems integration testing number 2. So they're looking at plan versus actual. Looking at results validation, because every time you run a test, then somebody in the Muni has to look at it and say, yep, that's correct. Same thing for HCM. We're looking at plan versus actual in terms of script execution. Did we run as we're planning to run them? And then how are we doing on the validation? We're also looking at security. Systems integration testing cycle 1 did not address security. It was planned, and it is being checked in cycle 2. But that means that there are defects where it says, oh, you're supposed to be able to do that, but the security is not letting you do that. Those are the kinds of things that are happening. To be expected. They're also checking on high and critical severity defects, and the trend is supposed to be downward, and it is downward, which is good. Less and less issues. here's that famous term, RICES. You know, they're tracking what's left out there to do in terms of reports, work, and so forth, what those acronyms mean. So they're looking at outstanding RICES, and again, if you're working outstanding RICES, then the trend should be downward. You're clearing them up, you're finishing them, the number should be going down, and it is. That's a good thing. Okay? There were 32 reports that were deferred, and those have been now brought in. They're working on those, and that's a good thing. Okay? So, training material, I harp on training a lot because it's now getting to a point where it's going to become truly an issue and truly important, because you're talking about 29 round numbers, 2,900 people that in some form or fashion are going to have to be trained. Okay? I'm looking an awful lot this direction, Dick. I hope you guys don't think I'm ignoring you.
No, I want them.
Okay.
I've sat through this many weeks.
Okay, so here, now again, there is good, decent tracking on what's going on with training. And right now they're in the whole process of literally developing training material. Okay, and the training material was in 3 types of material. The first is basically PowerPoints for in-person coursework. Okay, then there's work instructions, which are something that you just, it's kind of like a procedure that you write, and then you can look it up and you can read it and that sort of thing. Okay, and then there are exercises. So when you've got these courses in classrooms, you literally are structuring exercises so people can try things. Okay, so the first one is course decks. So, right now they're tracking and saying that they need to finish 25 courses. So there are 25 instructor-led, and they're called priority 1 and 2. And the reason there's priority 1 and 2 is there's a priority 3 grouping of 30 courses that the team was not going to have enough time to do before July the 3rd. So they were deferred. And they basically said, oh, you're going to do those after go live. One would hope that since they're not going to make July the 3rd, that we'll pull those in and we'll do those before we go live.
You might tell them right now the goal is October.
10-1. So that's how you can see the blue line is their plan, and the gold line bar is their actual work effort. And so I'm saying that they're in pretty good shape. Okay, they're in pretty good shape with getting the course decks completed. But we do need to note that it's about 1 per week, so they got to maintain that pace. And and I've looked at them. They're 60 pages of PowerPoint. Work instruction progress. Okay, they're planning on 6 per week until they get to 120 work instructions that are in the plan. And so far they've done 23. Okay, so they're already a little behind. Not a lot, but a little. But they've got to maintain this pace. You've got to generate them six a week, otherwise you're not going to make it. Okay, so that's why I say it's okay. So hopefully you can tell that the things that I've added are clearly there. I mean, I didn't create that chart, but I added the graphics on top. So here's their chart for exercise development. Hard to see, but over on the far right-hand side, they're planning on 91 exercises need to be developed. So they're supposed to be doing 7 per week. They have 0 completed at this point in time. So they're already almost a month behind. And they got to do 7 a week. So I basically am suggesting that's an uh-oh. The team needs to be paying attention to that one. Okay, project cost. Every week I receive from the team what is referred to as a weekly run rate. And the weekly run rate lists every consultant. All right. It identifies how many hours they reported that they worked on that particular week. It multiplies it times their particular billing rate. It estimates using a fixed percentage of what the expenses are going to be, and the expenses are tracked reasonably well. And then you get the totals. All right.
You might tell our new members where these workers are located at.
Okay.
They're not all here in the United
That's
States.
correct. So there are 30, around numbers, 37 or 38 SAP and Peloton consultants that are actually here, sometimes 2 weeks on, 1 week off, whatever the case may be, but they're physically here. The developers, the coders, there's about, I think round numbers, I think there's about 25 now, are in India. Okay? Then you got about 15 testers who are in Mexico, right? Mexico. Okay? So these are I'm referring to them as the offshore resources. All right? But the total number of hours, here's what you see from the beginning of the year, right? It's going up and down, but at the average for the year so far is 2,400 hours per week. So it's 1.25 FTE, annual FTEs per week. Okay? So it's not inconsequential. Now, there's a dip there, and I'm calling it the lull, and it's right between sit 1 and sit 2, but that's when everybody realized we're not going to make it. It's when everybody realized we're not quite finished, we're going to have to shift some things around, and we need to get ready for sit 2. We had to work on cleaning up some data, so there was a lull, and therefore there was a drop in the resources on the consultant side. So now using these spreadsheets that I've been tracking every week, I keep them in a big database. Your 2017 weekly average of what's accumulated in terms of cost is $455,000 a week. Okay? And the graph shows you the green is, the fees that are presumably expended or charged by those folks on that weekly run rate, and then the expenses is the purplish line. And the expenses have been tracking fairly consistently at around 12%. It was a little higher than that before we got the offshore folks, because the offshore folks don't travel. Okay? And you can see the low. Any questions on that? But remember the 455 because it comes into play when you start projecting the future. So the share of the pie, here's how the share of the pie looks. The biggest piece, not surprisingly, is SAP. So if you take the blue plus the dark brown, whatever color that is, plus the green, those three are all the SAP charges on an average basis over the year so far. Okay, the green is the offshore testers in Mexico, the offshore developers is the brown or purple or whatever color that is, and then the big piece is the SAP consultants here in Anchorage. So 73%. Peloton was the systems integrator on the second go-around of trying to pull the system in, bring the system in. Peloton provides resources. They have a good reputation. Most of the people among the Muni staff like working with the Peloton folks, and they think they know what they're talking about. They are detail analyst types.
Most of the Peloton people used to work for SAP.
Oh yeah, they're good folks, but none of them are involved with the management. SAP is responsible for the management. Okay, but you can see that 73% and 24% is 97%. That leaves 3% of the total charges spread across Alaska IT, John Marchenko, and Express Employment, which is the admin folks. And John Marchenko is the Muni's contracted program manager. Is that a fair way of? Okay. So he worries about managing and overseeing Muni resources. Alaska IT are technicians. So given we have some numbers here, I thought we might want to start thinking about what's this thing going to look like? What's the outlook? So if you look at the column, it says expended. That's coming right out of PeopleSoft's system. And that's been reported by Alden in terms of what the various charges are on a monthly basis and so forth. So that's coming out to $61,500,000. Okay? Now, My understanding is that not a single SAP invoice has been paid since the beginning of November. Right? There are issues. In other words, there's incorrect invoices, whatever the case may be, they have not been paid. Now, again, I'm not working off of invoices here. I'm working off of that weekly run rate, which lists all of the consultants and their rate and their charges and their rate per hour and all that. So that's where these numbers come from. So it's calculated based off of that weekly run rate.
Zach, I'm interrupting you for a minute.
Sure.
Alden, nothing since November?
So it kind of dovetails to a couple of slides earlier where Zig made the comment that they run out of hours on this week, basically, and that they're going to be working at risk. As we presented to the Assembly, and we presented here a couple of times in different presentations, when we asked for more money, that there was an investment piece that was going to be from SAP of approximately $6.5 million. That investment piece is for a large amount of work that really has already taken place between November and April. So what has happened is we have not been able to reach agreement and sign that change order. As a result of that, all of those invoices that we have received are inaccurate as it is because this change order is going to supplant them. So we have a mutual agreement not to touch any of the invoices beginning in November until this change order gets done, where SAP will actually give us the $5 million investment that they owe us. And then, as you can see, many of that $5 million will be applied to a lot of those invoices in the past. So we basically shut invoicing down because we didn't want it. Anything we pay there would be inaccurate once we get the change order. Unfortunately, this change order has progressed for many months now, and I still do not have a time period where they are going to finally finish that and sign off on it, which is, as I referred back, is why on Monday they're going to work at risk because they're the ones holding up the change order and they are not leaving this project just because they can't get their act together.
Mr. Peterson. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when you're saying the phrase "at risk," does that mean that SAP is at risk of not getting paid?
If they went another month, let's say, and then pulled out, which is hypothetically, we have nothing contractually that requires us to pay them for that month's worth of work that they would continue to do. That's the at-risk part.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
Any questions from our new members? Sorry, Zach.
And I appreciate all the going through that because the thing I keep trying to make sure we would recognize that I'm trying to focus on is what is this thing going to cost? I'm not addressing who's going to pay for it. Obviously, if SAP ponies up some money, in essence, you're not going to have to pay for as much. All right, so I realize that that's going on, but I can't make any projection about that. I mean,
well, it's SAP's interest to make sure this program works because you see town after town that's tried to do this, that had problems with it. It doesn't spell well for that company's reputation worldwide.
So the next column says, okay, well, the original thing was to go through July 3rd. So what's it going to take to run that? And if you recall, I said the average this year is $455,000 per week. Okay, so you say, fine, there's 11 weeks left. Multiply times 455, you get a number, which is $5 million. The other thing that we've been doing is because it is a software or systems development project, you are allowed to use you capitalize the internal resources that are charged to that. Okay, so up through mid-April, there was $11 million in there for internal resources over a 5.5 year period. And Alden gave me this estimate and said, okay, he thinks it's going to be another $650,000 to take us to the end of June. Okay, so that's an estimate. That's all I can tell you. Now, to go to completion, I don't think it's going to be $455,000 a week. I mean, what's going to happen? You're going to be finished with the testing, so you don't need the testers. And you're pretty much finished with most of the development, so you don't need those developers. So the good news is a lot of bodies go away. The bad news is that their average rate per hour is between 60 and 80, and the folks that are here are 300. So you don't get as much of a dollar impact. So I'll show you how I got to the 300, but that's 300,000 for another 13 weeks, and that takes us up to 3.9 million additional for professional services. And then again, Alden was suggesting to me that probably the MOA charges would be about 500,000. I have the software lines there in yellow because I really don't have a clue as to whether or not there's going to be some additional software purchases. We'll talk about that. But given all of that, I come up with the calculation over on the right-hand side. It looks like 78 million when it all is said and done of cost. So here, the calculation for the 300,000. I said, okay, you're running about 65,000 per week for the offshore charges. So subtract that from the 455, and you get 390. You say, okay, maybe you can get 25% of your on-site consultants if you could get them to roll off. And if you don't need them, that at 200, the blended rate, the average rate is about 250 per hour, so that gets you another $90,000. That got me to the 300. Okay, to be extended. Now, the next two items on there are just to say, here's some of the uncertainty about potential software charges. There's some question right now about view-only license fees for OpenText. OpenText is the enterprise content management solution. That's where we store documents. Okay, scan them and store them. And the whole idea is you're going to have a lot of people that are going to want to take a look at things, but they're not going to do any processing. So you only want them to be able to bring it up and look at it. Typically, that is a much cheaper license. Typically. Well, right now there's some concern because apparently there are two different stories as to how much those licenses are going to be, and so I have no idea. That's got to get resolved.
By machine that uses to reach
That's by user.
By user. By person. So if you have 500 people that are going to need view licenses, and if you've got an order of magnitude of maybe 10 between the price differential, that becomes a big number.
I'll just give you a little bit of an example here. Obviously, we're fighting with that. But, the quote we got when we started this was $75 a user license, which sounds pretty good. The new quote is $3,000. So when you go from $75 to $3 million, you can understand where I am arguing on a minute-by-minute basis. So I'm working it. Doing what I can do, but that's why that is a potential issue.
I will tell you, the software people do that all the time. When we got our new system in years ago, our scheduling system for the Summit, it was license only for 3 machines. So how do you make changes to it? It was not Microsoft Word accessible, so we had to pay them more money to make it work.
The last item, which was a surprise, I know, to Alden, because I was there when it was first mentioned. He wasn't too happy when he heard this. Out of the clear blue, somebody says, hey, wait a minute, we need some job scheduler software. And oh, by the way, it costs a fortune. That's being worked too, but right now it's just up in the air.
Is that coming from SAP?
Internal.
It's internal. There's lots of stories about that.
They want to spend $400,000.
Okay, so I just went by the impact slide with regard to processes. I apologize, I went too fast, but basically, I think I told you earlier that I'm very interested and very concerned about the whole change management thing, the training thing, and so forth, because it's getting closer and closer to the time when you're going to start touching everybody in the organization. Okay, it's not just the IT folks, or it's not just the team. It's now going outside, and that's going to. When it starts happening, things become dicey. So policies, and we had this conversation a few months ago, that when the team did the change impact study, they identified a lot of policy changes. And policy changes are a big deal. Okay, so I said, hey, we got to start tracking this stuff. We got to start paying attention. So it's been going on, but it's a little out of date. So right now there were 36 changes identified for HCM. You remember that's payroll and benefits and so forth. The team determined that 21 of them were really duplicates or they weren't needed. Okay, that left 17. 12 were actually need to be created from scratch, and about half of those are in the draft process right now. Okay, so there's some movement there. 5 policies need to be updated. 2 of them are in the draft process. So there's some movement with HCM. That's a good thing. Here's where it starts getting to be a little nervous. On the financial side, the financial logistics side, logistics includes purchasing. Okay? Here's the list of all the modules that are part of quote-unquote FILO. Here's a list of all the number of policy changes that need to take place. Okay? Now, fortunately, when you see that long list of policy changes, it's not a one-for-one. You don't have that many policies, but there are a number of changes for one policy. So, okay, but you can see the list of the number of policies. The concerning thing here, there's 2. One is little or no work has been done on this. Okay? Since February. So in February, this was the status. Little or no work has been done. Then we get down to the one at the bottom. There are municipal code changes that are going to be required. That starts affecting you. That starts affecting you. And we went and double checked this with a couple of people. I said, is this really going to be a code change? I said, yeah, I think so. Here they are. Okay, now you can look at them. I mean, I don't think we need to go through the details here. But the point is there are, as you can see, 5 changes coming out of the SAP system, all of which are going to have some kind of, potentially some kind of code change, municipal code change. And 2 of them says this is brand new. It's nowhere in the code. All right? So those are going to require even more energy, in my opinion. And certainly we've got some lead time issues here because we have to go through a pretty important kind of a process with the assembly when you start talking about making changes to the municipal code. Okay, now, this would have been a disaster if we were going to go live 7.3. We got a little more time now, okay? Got a little more time, but I'm trying to get the team to understand that it's pretty important. All right, so as far as I'm concerned, you know, as the mayor said, let's go. We got to go live. If you recall the plan document and how strange it was, and the fact that it had a different way of, you know, reporting progress, and the dates were all targeted towards July, and you know, folks have known about this for several months now. To me, I'm sitting there going, well, why can't we get a plan like this put together? I presented this to you last month, if you recall. And so there it is. I mean, they probably can do that. Now, the thing that I've done is I've done some things that are a little different. First of all, I enforced precedents. Plan, and I've told you this before, the plan that is in place as the master plan does not enforce precedents. And it also has almost everything occurring in parallel, as opposed to sequential. You would think, I mean, if you looked at their plan closely, you say, well, wait a minute. Development is, programming. One would think that you got to do that before you test something. And yeah, you got some correction stuff, but at some point in time, it shouldn't run all the way to the end. I mean, there's something funny there. Anyway, so you've got to recognize holidays. There are a lot of holidays coming up. Why wouldn't the plan recognize that those holidays exist? And then the green bars, pardon?
Because we work on it.
Yeah, I know, you do. You do. Now the green bars up there is because I kept asking, if you've got more time, you ought to be able to pick up some things that you deferred. And so I show them. There they are. Okay? Because everybody deferred the CAFA reports. Now they are starting to work on it, but it's not in the plan. I don't understand that. And same, I mentioned to you earlier the priority 3 training. That's down here at the bottom. You see priority 3 courses. Well, let's do them. I mean, why would you sit there and not do them? I mean, the response I get is, well, it's not in scope. And when the team says it's not in scope, they're saying it doesn't fit within those 55 weeks. All right? So, go ahead. Absolutely.
So on that last slide you had, I'm still thinking about the policy changes and the code changes that could be a potential roadblock. Are those on there somewhere too?
You make a wonderful straight person.
Well, let me
I've been told that before.
Because he knows what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Once we put together the plan from an OCM perspective, we handed over all of that to the, basically ER was determined to help manage that. So the project is not managing how well those policies are being changed, how the individual departments are doing their job. There's a lady in ER that's supposed to be checking that and so forth. So Zig is always asking me, well, what's going on? We did our part. We handed it off. Basically, the project has dissolved itself of responsibility to ensure that the municipality does what it needs to. What I believe Zig is bringing to your attention is, in his research and talking with those departments who are doing this, they don't seem to be progressing as much as they would. But because I have dissolved myself of this, I do not believe it needs to be in the plan, because it's not something I'm watching. It's not something that we told them I needed to change. I don't write code. That's not a project responsibility. What Zig is bringing up is that these departments who have these particular responsibilities, some are working on them and some don't seem to be working on them, and the ones that have code changes that require assembly seem to be farther behind than the ones who do not. And I believe he's just bringing it to your attention. But you will not find them in the plan, because it's not my responsibility to ensure those departments do what they need to do.
Well, look, can you give me the departments you're talking about and the belly button contact point for each department? There's all the work session dragging themselves in.
I believe
I want to explain them to explain to us what they're doing, because you're right, Suzanne, code is what we do.
I believe
It has to be written and brought to the assembly. You have to hold it public ground on something.
It's going to be the controllers.
I want to make sure it happens.
It's going to be it's Philo, because HCM is in pretty decent shape. I mean, they're coming along
Slides
reasonably well.
34 and 35, I think, are working.
Yeah, but it's the controllers area. It's the controllers area, and it's purchasing. Okay.
So Zig, if you can give me the exact departments.
Policy changes under supplier.
Purchasing.
You can read what they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if we're talking
See, this is about shopping cart. That's purchasing.
Right. If you go back to slide 35.
Remember Amazon? Yeah,
And
it's
you
Amazon.
see there that those 5 are the potential code changes, and all of those are purchasing.
Most of those
So
purchasing.
I think the
Yeah,
first
just
5 is
Ron knows.
that I would worry
It's just,
about.
he's into the
ones he's
private
identified on
equity.
page 35. That's the purchasing.
If it's
The
changed,
shopping
hold up,
cart
go
thing,
live.
stuff like that.
Well, not only a shame, it would mean that you don't have policy to drive action, which is what
Right.
policy is
So, you know,
for.
Ron had-
I disagree with you, and I think it should be in there, quite frankly.
You can-
I mean,
Prior
it
slide.
can be
you
assigned to
see
somebody
that's
else.
highlighted here
Doesn't have to
in
be
red.
him, I understand
For code
that.
changes, that's SRN.
It's part of the critical
And that's
Exactly.
laid out
For instance,
in
time
line.
clocks are not up there.
Okay.
You got any idea what's going to happen?
That would be the.
No.
You're gonna get your.
When time clocks
but
don't
just
work,
that on
when
the
you
front.
start to do payroll
There might
in
be
October,
one or two other ones out there.
they're coming along fine. There's somebody, but they're not in the plan. I
All right, so you can get back on.
Yeah.
Sorry, Zig. You want to continue, sir?
Okay, can I go on?
Go ahead, sir.
All right. So I usually try to kind of close off my session with an outlook. So I got some commentary here. So while it is notable that both SIT 2 and Mach 3 are being tracked daily, which I think is great, the deferral in SIT 1 of selected data builds and of selected Philo test scripts has led to a higher than anticipated level of defects in SIT 2 and Mach 3. Okay, so that stuff got deferred.
If I could, let me just put it in English terms.
Thank you.
In SIT 1, we have our HR and we have our finance and logistics, and they each have a variety of test scripts to be run. What happened in SIT 1, HCM was able to do the vast majority of them. Philo did hardly any because we got into testing and we found out that they were not all these development objects. There were some that were still outstanding, and we couldn't do it. So all the testing that we wanted to do in SIT 1 on the Philo side basically did not occur. So all of those areas in development have been taken care of, but now we're in SIT 2. It's in essence that we're in SIT 1 for Philo because we never had the 5 or 6 weeks to be able to do it the first time through. HCM, which is doing better, this is their second time. You would expect them to have better because they've been through it. So that's just the English version of it, is that Philo did not accomplish anything in SIT 1 that they needed to, and we're we're doing it now, but it's causing us a lot more pain and angst than we would prefer at this point in time.
And when I say higher than anticipated, we got to realize that the plan says this is how long that we're going to take on SIP 2. Okay, and if you want to maintain that schedule, then you've got a lot more occurring, then you need more resources. And so what's happening is that all of a sudden there's an increased pressure on the subject matter experts, the Muni folks, to run test scripts, to validate the test results, and at the same time clean up the information like grants, which continues to be a thorn in everybody's side, and validating the data builds for Mach 3. So it's kind of coming right down on the Muni staff heads. It's unplanned in the sense that nobody expected to have to basically do first time through with SIP 2. Does that make sense? And the other thing is happening is the data thing is going on at the same time as well, which is a matter of cleaning up information, cleaning up data. So here's another comment. The project team must continue to look for ways to boost team morale, because this kind of pressure is just going to make things worse. And people on the project team are getting very tired. I mean, some of the folks have been involved for 5 years. Okay? So the SMEs are being requested to provide significant time for both testing and Mach 3 data prep, noticeably more than 8 hours a day. And oh, by the way, still do your day job. It's a lot of pressure. Because of that, the only way you can get extra hours, and you've got limited number of resources, you got limited people who know what's going on, starting this Saturday, right?
Yeah, I made a decision yesterday or whatever that we need to get ahead of the curve. This is not new. Our team has been working Saturdays and Sundays since January. Most of them are working 16 to 20 hours a day, and they've been doing it for 4 months right now.
What's the overtime?
Wow.
Well, it's tied into the numbers that Zig had already presented to you about the amount of Muni stuff. But we're running about $650,000 a quarter, so our first 3 months. But because of data and the amount of energy and so forth in there, we have about 15 core people that are putting in 14, 18, 20-hour days, and they've been doing it for months, on top of the fact that many of those have been doing it for 5 years. It's an impossible task for me to lead them and to keep telling them that I have no choice but to continue. I need you to work. You're the only ones to do it. I have no other alternatives, and you've got to keep going. And on the backside of that, they've got their regular jobs and so forth. A couple of years ago, we told all the directors, we've got money and we've got backfill money, go hire some other people. Very few people took advantage of that. And then now we're right into the mix where we need their people, and there's nobody else that they have to be able to do them, and that staff is burning out. And they hate me, which was expected. But
And of course, you have somebody check your current restart every night or what?
They really hate me.
Commentary number 3. You can't say this enough. I've said it, I think, for the last 3 or 4 months. Got to get this change order resolved. Got to get it resolved. I mean, it's just the uncertainties that thing is creating is a mess. It's a nightmare. And I think it's time for that project plan to be more realistic. I mean, the team's reporting as if the target's 7.3. The progress percent complete numbers are all very, very funny looking. And meanwhile, the training team is going ahead and saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to target training for mid-July." So they're already thinking beyond that date. But the positive thing here is that the MOA is, because things are close now, just a few months out, starting to shift their focus on what's going to happen afterward, which, by the way, is going to get the attention of IT, because that's going to start falling on IT's shoulders. Okay, so let's look beyond go live very quickly. Your consent decree approved these numbers. So that was buried in there. There's a bunch of SAP stuff. Just wanted you to see the SAP stuff. So this is ongoing budget revisions. And you'll remember the HEC contract, the AMS contract. Those are the things that got approved Tuesday night. And then there's the one-time charges. IT is already starting to think about getting resources. I think it's interesting, you know, and there's, you have to move from the Sunshine Building because that's where, for those of you that haven't heard, that's where most of the staff is, but they're all coming back here now because the lease runs out. But the thing that's interesting is the deferral of SAP depreciation. Since they, apparently, whoever did this budget was thinking we're not going to get very much depreciation charge in 2017. Okay, because the go-live date keeps getting later in the year.
We initially had it in the budget starting in July.
Yeah.
That's when it was going to go live.
So now it gets moved.
You don't depreciate for 3 months, so you don't need to have that expense.
Yeah. So that's what that was. Here's a preliminary list. This is my creation. Best I can tell, I have asked IT for feedback on this, but I have not heard anything. These are some things that are probably going to occur and probably need to occur after go live. So there's a need to provide detailed reporting for P-cards. It's currently not in the design of the system. Muniverse, if you've not heard about Muniverse, it is, you have, so you know what it is. Well, it's not in the system, it's not in the plan to mirror that capability. Right? So it needs to happen. So it'll probably happen post-go live. Probably need to have enterprise-wide queries. May have some few reports that are standard that'll be hanging out. Certainly want to make sure we complete the training. We need to have expertise on how to use the report writer. And then help desk has to be established, and then we need to make sure that we establish some way to monitor and manage that HEC contract, which will get to be real interesting, as SAP has proven they are not easy to work with. This is just a listing from the today's Muniverse, and I thought it'd be interesting to see the various combinations of queries that are actually sitting out there. And this is the list, and if you were to sit there and literally start calculating the combinations, you'd get tens of thousands of query combinations. And that's what's in Muniverse, that's what needs to be replicated.
They took 5 years to
yeah, I mean, it's not inconsequential.
This is not a lot of PeopleSoft, so don't think that this is a quick, easy
No,
thing.
no. That's why I said tens of thousands.
Although which department's going to write specific queries?
What it really is it's the users out there wanting to go in and get quick information about their budgets, quick information about.
They have a drop-down chart that allows you to select different areas.
Yeah, the people that use Muniverse are the ones that really are just the lower level managers and the supervisors out there who just want to go and track something that's specific to them without going in and knowing the system, that they can just, somebody who's a street maintenance supervisor can go and query something. So they developed easy queries so they didn't have to figure out how to get it out of the system to be able to do it, and they stored these, and as people came up with requests, they were able to do that. But we got to go live first before we can worry about how to make everything better.
It's just, the reason I bring this up is I just think it's important for IT to be planning that stuff.
There's a lot.
Yep, absolutely. That would be the end of my discussion. Any questions?
He's got AMATs we need to go to. So questions, Suzanne, Felix?
I do.
But we've got time.
But,
1:30 is nobody going to move to.
Has it been moved to 2?
Yeah, because we couldn't get a room upstairs because AMATs.
Oh.
So it's actually
Yes,
going to
go
be in
ahead.
this room right here at 2 o'clock.
What is?
My FSC meeting.
Oh, but AMS, is that still at 1:30?
Yep,
It's still upstairs at 1:30 for those that
We got booted from that one, so that's why I have a half hour. So if you have some questions.
I have some real general questions that go back to, just so I can understand, and some specific questions too. Like in our packet this week, we approved additional programming or additional costs for something that I would have thought would have been included in this. I wish I can't remember.
Was it capital or?
It was.
There was
I'll have
no
to go back.
capital they approved. It was all operating.
I think it was.
Might have been. There was some development stuff for IT, but it wasn't SAP related, so I didn't pull it out.
Well, when I read what was included, it's like, okay, this will be added down the road. And so the question I guess I have is, what are there a lot of other items that or functions that will be added further down the road? Is that too general, or is this
There
intended to capture?
there are many things.
Many things.
This is
Okay.
a huge system.
Right.
Just give you one example. We'll go
Okay.
at the ECM, which is Electronic Content Management. That was something that the Assembly Act was really interested in having us include. It wasn't something necessarily we had to do, but we included it for 3 departments: purchasing, accounts payable, and the ER department. And we've been incorporating that as a part of our project right now, and it's capital and it's up to go live, and we're striving to make that happen. But what that doesn't mean is that every other department out there don't have it. So that's the one easy example to say. In January, somebody could say, you know what, we want to add AR and planning and projects and assets, and because this is going to be a repository for these documents of the entire municipality. The project's only doing the first 3. We're getting it started, but there's an easy example that you're going to have, assuming you want it and you approve it, an ongoing financial commitment to roll that out across the rest of the municipality. There are many other ones, but that's just one example. This system you will see stuff all the time. It's cost a lot, and it's going to cost a lot in the future, and if you want to enhance it, take full advantage of those things, those will all be financial things that would be out there.
Here's a problem, so now with PeopleSoft, we didn't maintain it.
Right.
This could have done this if we maintained PeopleSoft. Some modifications.
Right.
We dropped doing any modifications on it, so we fell so far behind it would cost us just as much to go with PeopleSoft.
Okay. Well, and that kind of hits the bigger question I have, and forgive me, it's very, very basic, and I'm sure you've all covered it many times before. It's just, what's the return on investment?
It will always be negative on this project, no matter how long it goes. The mayor's even, I think, believes that because of the 40 to 5 million that was wasted to begin with, you'll never see a positive return. What you need to look at it is the following: PeopleSoft is going to run out and collapse. It's on the mainframe. You've got to do something. We're at this stage. We spent a lot of money, but I would never expect that you're going to have a positive return on investment. It's some cost. It's in the past.
Sure.
Let's get the system up and running, and then take advantage of whatever the functionality is. But I would never determine ROI, and I would never
Full sucking cost.
Well,
never again.
I would have thought there would have been a business case that would have.
There was an ROI to begin with.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
And
2011.
And that was when the organization that won the contract bid $9.5 million.
9.6 million.
9.6 million. So if they were probably showed a return on investment on 9.6 million. At 80 million, that's a little difficult to get a return on investment.
Right.
Because the actual return probably hasn't changed.
Okay.
And we could talk sometime about the lack of foresight on the committee that decided to bring PeopleSoft online.
Okay.
That's one other story.
Okay. Well, thank you, because this has come up in some constituent discussion.
Sure.
And folks kind of want to know, like, how do we get without playing any kind of blame game, objectively, how do we go down this path? And if it's underbid, how do you protect the city in that case too? When something
I
is
think
grossly
the
underbid?
report, you get when I sent it out, that we had the external review committee, which were public citizens that were here. I think those would give you some talking points on why they determined or felt that we needed to continue down this path, knowing that it was going to be a lot of money and the pros and cons. And I think that'll really help you say, the administration did look at it. This is what the municipal population said we should do, and they marched down that particular path.
Okay.
And you get so far down the path, there's no way to get back out of the ditch when you're in it.
Right. Understood. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know if you can really truly appreciate the scale of what we're trying to accomplish here when you're also talking about bringing the utilities on as well to one core system. It's a huge thing.
But it's something dynamic too, that as long as it's maintained, can be added to.
But the critical part about this is I'm going to give you guys a system that kills you, which is close to happening, but The system will be only as good as the municipal employees maintain it going forward. So you have to keep your policies and your procedures in place. You have to have supervisors that require their employees to use the system the way it is.
Right.
But you don't want to, you want to make sure that any administration, whatever it is in the future, has their employees following the processes, because the whole benefit of SAP is its integration. That's the whole point. If you get one department out of 50 that doesn't do what they're supposed to do, because of how it integrates through, the whole system will collapse. So it's really important. It's really important to ensure that they all do what is in the best interest of the system and the integration of that. And if you do that, this system will crank out numbers and things that you've never even had at your fingertips. But if one entity decides to do something on an Excel spreadsheet, like half of our work that we do is not in PeopleSoft right now. It's in Excel and Access.
It's off the chart.
It's not even there.
PeopleSoft, they have their own Excel spreadsheets. We want to make sure it's with this new system, no one's allowed to have Excel or Access or anything else. They've got to use this system.
You've got to use it, or it will become very obsolete very quickly.
And that becomes a policy procedure manual where we tell the departments you cannot use anything else.
Right.
And holding those people to that requirement of what you see.
Goes back to creative.
The integrate the whole struggle we have with data is mapping. How do I map a grant to the project, to the budget, to this? Well, just by that you can see the integration. One grant doesn't get mapped through, you will not balance in every other department. It just will fall apart, and that's why it's killing you.
In all this defense, we took you from the school district. He was a nice, happy employee, eating kids' lunches and dinners. We grabbed him and brought him here and decided what the hell.
But just in the future, the system will, I'll get you a system that's going to not be perfect, but it'll be a good starting point. But you will have to build on it. You will have to invest in it, and you will have to ensure your employees across all entities use the system the way it was designed to take advantage of that. And that is going to be a long-term challenge, no matter what assembly, what administration, whatever you're doing it, because the likelihood is you want to use this at least 20, if not 25 years. That's a lot of them. That's a lot of people. Or you will fall back in the exact same trap we have, sir.
Any other questions?
And I will offer, we've offered it before, if you want us, if any of you would like to stop over at Sunshine to see, you can go through Barbara, and I can certainly arrange an opportunity to ship you through. I have moved all of the HR people into this building, as Zig was mentioning, so we are a slow transition out of there, but if you want to see scale and what's going on, I'd be more than happy to show anybody around.
Thank you.
Thanks. Zig, thank you very much.
You're entirely welcome, sir.
Meeting's over with. Thanks for being here.
As always, good to see you.
Good to see you.